Hit me.
From Studio P in Sausalito, the home of the hit, it's time for...
Succotash.
Yes, Succotash, the Comedy Soundcast Soundcast featuring snippets from comedy.
Soundcasts.
And also interviews with comedians, comedian soundcasters, and other showbiz folk. And now, here's your host, internationally recognized Comedy Soundcast Soundcaster, Marc Hershon.
Marc
Hello, friend. Marc Hershon here for yet another edition, the 350th installment, in fact, of Succotash, the Comedy Soundcast Soundcast. Later this month, we'll be celebrating hitting our 12th anniversary of bringing you clips from mostly comedy soundcasts and interviews with some of those soundcasters, some comedians, and some other showbiz folk, as our esteemed booth announcer Bill Heywatt is fond of saying. That anniversary show will be fun. It'll be me and my switching off with me every other week co-host Tyson Saner on the show together. That's right, together, along with a special guest surprise. That show is going to drop on Tuesday, April 25th, so mark your calendars. Speaking of Tyson, if you missed last week's episode 349, you missed his special One for the Kids installment featuring clips from Wow in the World, TDR Now Travel Podcast, and Story Pirates. With a lot of kids on spring break this week or next, depending on your school district, grab that episode and see if there isn't a show or two in that bunch that might make some good road trip filler if you're heading out with those little ankle biters. I don't have clips for you this week, but instead, it's a Succotash Chats episode featuring my visit with an old friend of mine who doesn't have a podcast. He headed up a sketch comedy group in North Hollywood called Fries on the Side that I got involved with way back, 20 years ago. And we get into that quite a bit. He's acted in TV and movies and commercials for quite a while, but then also very much got into computers and technology and programming. And well, we talk about how he made his choice to move away from the Hollywood thing. This episode is brought to you by our long-running sponsor, Henderson's Pants. And because they don't pay us nothing, when they told us they were going to be advertising their new artificial intelligence trousers, we figured we'd lost enough money with this non-paying turkey, so we've created the first Henderson's Pants ad completely put together by AI. That's right, artificial intelligence. The script was written by ChatGPT. The AI version of Bill Heywatt reading was provided by the Natural Reading app, and some 8-bit computer music by Dream Protocol finished off the whole thing. So then we smushed it all together and voila, history was made. And here it is, the first fully AI-driven commercial for Henderson's Pants, followed immediately by my chat with Shane Elliott.
Hello, friends. Bill Heywatt here, and I'm excited to introduce you to the future of fashion, brought to you exclusively by Henderson's Pants. Get ready for the revolutionary Henderson's AI trousers, the first pants completely designed by artificial intelligence. That's right, folks. Our advanced AI system analyzed millions of data points, fashion trends, and comfort needs to create the perfect pair of trousers. Not only do they look fantastic, but they also come with 3 incredible benefits you won't find in any other slacks. Adaptive fit technology. Say goodbye to uncomfortable waistbands and tight pockets. The AI trousers feature a cutting-edge fabric that adjusts seamlessly to your body shape, providing a perfect fit, no matter your size or how much you've indulged at that buffet. The AI trousers boast an intelligent temperature control system. These pants monitor your body temperature and adjust their breathability and insulation to keep you comfortable in any climate. Hot summer day? No problem. Freezing winter? Bring it on. And finally, the stain repellent nano coating. Spill your coffee? Dropped ketchup on your lap? Fear not. With the AI trousers, liquids and stains simply roll off, keeping your pants looking pristine all day long. Originally designed for the busy commuter who needs a versatile, comfortable pair of pants that can handle the daily hustle and bustle. The high-powered executive who wants to make an impression in the boardroom while enjoying unmatched comfort and style. And the eco-conscious fashionista who values sustainable, ethically produced clothing without sacrificing aesthetics or functionality. So, what are you waiting for? Head over to your nearest Henderson's retailer to grab a pair of AI trousers today. Remember, with Henderson's pants, you're not just wearing trousers, you're wearing a piece of history, and now, the future, since 1428. And now back to Succotash.
Joining us for Succotash today is an old friend, Shane Elliott. Shane Elliott, first time on the podcast, probably last interview before we go on hiatus. Welcome to Succotash.
Thank you. Long-time listener, first-time guest.
Shane does not have a podcast,
Yeah,
but you're probably the last person in America not to have have a podcast.
Yeah.
But Shane and I go way back. I was in a sketch comedy troupe that Shane had really been sort of the flag bearer and creator of back in North Hollywood, called Fries on the Side.
Yeah, North Hollywood is, as we all know, huge
hotbed
for sketch comedy, right?
Yes, exactly.
I mean, that's what it's known for. It's not known for anything else. There's no other entertainment field that North Hollywood is known for. It's just sketch comedy.
but it was quite an experience. I mean, that group was started before I joined and lasted long after I'd moved out of Los Angeles. So what was it, 10 years?
8 years.
8 years.
And I'll be honest, the last 2 years, I wasn't that into it. You know, when it got going, it was the reason. Well, didn't you help come up with the name?
No, it had the name when I first found out about it.
Oh, it did.
From Carla. Carla used to hang out at the coffee place I hung out. She said, "Oh, you got to come check out this group." So I came to see a show, and you guys were still doing the show with scripts in hand at the time. So I said, there's a way to probably rig up a teleprompter system to do this.
Yeah, you're like, you've guys heard about computers? I'm like, yeah, I mean, I work in the industry. I should have figured that out, but you're right.
But it was if I remember the first 6 to 8 months of the teleprompter system, that was some of the better times during the show because we had 2 TVs. I think they were tube TVs. They weren't even flat screen, and they were just completely jury rigged, and they would invariably go down during the show. We would end up having to improvise. Some of the sketches.
Yeah, they were my leftover. I'd replaced all the televisions in my house with normal ones. And then I was like, well, I've got these 2 leftover CRTs, right? Let me just haul these down, these 40-pound blocks of metal and plastic. And we just, oh my gosh, I mean, getting that stuff in and out. I think we eventually stored them there, but we set them up, and then I ran these long RGB cables up the side of the theater to a small, like, crappy laptop.
Yeah.
It was not exactly we finally did better. We replaced those, but
I like to feel we were pioneers.
Yeah. We were like retro pioneers, right? So it was like, yeah, you guys are doing everything the right way. What if we just pretended like certain technology didn't exist? What would that look like? And that's what we ended up, being like, oh, look, you can do it. You can still do it. And it's like, yeah, you could, but you shouldn't.
Yeah, we did with the shows, though, just for the listener, where it was sort of along the basis of kind of like almost a Saturday Night Live, where we would have a guest host, who would come in, and they were usually a comic, and they would do like a little stand-up set at the beginning, or sometimes I think we did like a cold open sketch sometimes with them. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah. So okay. So it didn't start that way. So I'll try to make this brief, but the way it began is I was in a theater company as an actor, and they had this spot of time open after their main show. And it was just like lingering time. And I was like, well, you already have an audience, right, for the show. What if we just did something fun afterward that was just kind of improvisational and whatever? So we came up with this idea to do like I think a 30-minute, maybe an hour long. I don't even know if it was an hour at the time, but people could just put up anything they wanted. So if you wanted to read a poem, you could do it. And people did. And if you wanted to do a stand-up routine, you could do it. So it was very loose. And I think somebody called it Fries on the Side. I don't remember who, but they said it's kind of like the fries on the side of the main meal. And I was like, there's the name. There's the name. And so that was that stupid. Like there was nothing clever about how we came up with that name. And then we started doing it for a while that way. And I'm just a little bit of a, I don't know, perfectionist when it comes to, it's like if this isn't getting better over time, then I don't want to keep doing it. Like I don't just want to do something for no reason. So I think what happened is we had that format that was, there's no director, there was no kind of staff of writers or anything like that. It was just do whatever you want. And it's called Fries on the Side. And I was like, that's not going to be enough for me. So I started to mold it a little bit, eventually started to let people direct their stuff. And we had writing submissions and we started to refine that. And then I started to realize there's no uniform kind of format or tone to the show. So then I was like, well, somebody needs to direct the whole thing. And the obvious choice was just me. I didn't really want to do it, but I was like, well, I know the show enough, so I think I can figure this out. So I started directing the whole thing, which led to it just over time, it just continually evolved. And we just kept things that worked and, changed things that didn't. And I think by the time you got there, we probably had the format kind of down. And yeah, I mean, we weren't exactly innovators. It was basically the format of SNL.
Yeah, which was fine.
Because it worked, it worked. And we had a live music. We would do a lead-in sketch that would open the show, and then we'd have the host come out and kind of exactly the same as SNL.
Yeah.
Right?
So, yeah, but we had access to, people that had some notoriety because we're in Hollywood or North Hollywood.
Yeah, we were in a good location.
Yeah. So we had some cool people. I mean, every time I watched Succession, I remember, hey, we had Alan Ruck do the show twice.
That's right. Yeah, twice. And I think we're the only people to have gotten him to do a really good Ferris Bueller kind of parody.
That's right.
Which was great. I don't know. Can we swear on this show?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So yeah, the format of that sketch, I don't remember who wrote it, but basically it was Cameron and Ferris and Sloan all grown up. And Cameron had married Sloan. But clearly Sloan still was attracted to Ferris, right? So
that's right. So
Cameron basically was dealing with his marriage falling apart while his best friend Ferris kept, sleeping with his wife. And he had developed this massive cocaine habit. And we got him to wear the
hockey jersey. Yeah.
Got him to wear the jersey, and he just went with it. It was the most irreverent, like dark comedy version of the future of that threesome that you can imagine.
Oh man, it's great.
And I still have, I only have like a part of that footage. I never did find the complete copy, but I still have the super cut of like when we pitched it to Comedy Central.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, and that was fun because eventually your connection to Dana Carvin, we got him to kind of look at the show, and we performed with him that one time in San Francisco, which was dream come true.
That's right. Yeah. The Mill Valley, right?
Yeah. And I think, what happened, I think with Fries, where it was unique is that, first of all, SNL's like, oh, we do it, we rehearse and we do all this stuff in a week. I'm like, we do it in about 4 hours. So, I mean, it's a little high wire ride. I mean, it's terrifying because like almost no rehearsal. And then we got these famous people to come in like Tommy Davidson and Carlos from
Alizraki.
Yeah. And Danny Woodburn.
Yeah. Right? Glenn Morshower.
And then
remember, he would always do that character. He would come out and do that character.
Oh, Tractor Boy. Yeah, and for anybody who doesn't know who Glenn Morshower is, you can look him up. But I'll tell you this: he's the military guy in every movie you've seen. That always you never know who he is, but you're like, I've seen him play this part before.
Exactly. Just look him up on Google Images, and you'll go, oh, that guy.
He's always the general, and he's got this great voice, and he's a great guy too. But yeah, he would do the most offensive Tractor Boy character that was just, sorry, Glenn, if you're listening, but it was offensive. And, this is before our social sensibilities changed a bit.
Yeah.
But the good thing about the show was that I think we had a great talent pool of people who were in Groundlings and UCB in LA. I mean, we even had Flo from Progressive.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Stephanie Courtney.
Yeah.
She hosted. I mean, we just did a lot of really, I think, edgy, clever, irreverent things. And I think Dana's compliment was the best one I heard, which is he said, that you guys have a beginning, a middle, and an end to your sketches. That kind of like a flow. He's like that. That's something I always thought was missing from SNL. I'm like, well, it's a great point. I never thought of it that way, but yeah. I mean,
that's one of the things, because we did have, there was a long period where we had those writers meetings, and that was the only thing that was really prepped, was we would do the writing during the week. And we'd had a writer meeting. And I mean, that was always a thing of mine, was we've got to come up with decent endings, because to me, SNL was trying to be like Monty Python, and Monty Python had hit on the idea that you don't have to have endings.
Right.
Because they just segue into the next thing. We said, well, we need endings. So it became kind of this thing. How does this thing end? How does it build? Where does it end?
But see, if you're segueing, if you're like linking the sketches, right? Kind of like Mr. Show or Monty Python, then you don't need to worry about the endings.
Exactly.
Because they're new beginnings. But SNL will often do this thing where they're kind of building the sketch. They're building the comedic beats, because it has to get more and more ridiculous each time if you're going to build it.
Right.
So you build it. And then once it got to the peak, they would just be like, and then she left, and then the lights out. I'm like, wait, hold on.
Then go to commercial.
Yeah. You guys had so much more opportunity there to kind of wrap it up, right? The closure can be as funny as the build. So
yeah.
That was,
You started doing that as an offshoot of acting at the Sanford Meisner Center.
Right.
So you came to it from acting, but was there an interest in comedy for you before you got into, turning it into Fry's into a sketch show? Was there any sort of comedy interest?
It was, for me, it was I just always wanted to have fun doing anything that involved acting, entertainment, whatever I was doing. I wanted it to be fun for me and obviously for other people. And I guess I had a comedic sense or a timing that I understood. So, Fry's evolved into sketch comedy because the sketch pieces or the comedy pieces were the ones that did the best. So I just cut the stuff that didn't work, and we were left with sketch comedy. I didn't force it that way,
Yeah.
I allowed it to just evolve as it was supposed to. I guess I was just kind of the editor of the content, but no, I mean, I didn't ever want to do stand-up. Right? To me, I think it's a horrifying thing to do, to get up there and try to make people laugh one-on-one. It's just, nope. And I hear all the stories from comics like, oh yeah, you have a bomb night, and I'm like, it sounds horrible. I don't want that. I don't want to do that. So I always preferred the collaborative, process of putting together a sketch. And then, comedy was just what I was better at. I think it wasn't an intent or an ambition.
What drew you into acting in general?
Oh man. Well, I was a super shy kid. And, when I was about 16, somebody asked me to, if I wanted to do this children's theater thing with them. And they were my friend, and I just wanted to do it to hang out with my friend. I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I had no idea what I was getting into. And so we did this play, horrible, like the director of the class wrote the play. I'm like, yeah. Looking back, I'm like, yeah, that's probably not a good sign. But they wrote this play, and I remember we were on performance night. The family, everybody comes down to see, what did they learn and how good are they? And somebody had changed their costume physically quite different on the night of the performance. So they came out dressed as Shakespeare. It's not good again to the content of that play, because it was horrible. But he was dressed as Shakespeare. There's a time travel element to it and all kinds of, it was probably a sketch and the directors didn't know it. But he comes out and he had drawn these giant, mustaches on his face. It looked ridiculous. I turn around and I'm supposed to be on stage the whole time. I got the lead in the thing. So I'm supposed to be out there the whole time. I look at him, I start laughing and I can't remember my lines at all. It's the word. I wasn't ever afraid of that because I memorized them, but it's the thing that everybody says they're afraid of.
Sure.
Yeah. And so when I forgot my lines, I just started making them up. And yeah, the other actors were like, they just terrified. They didn't know what was happening. They kind of went with it, but I just went kind of with everything. And so afterward, the audience loved it. They thought it was hilarious. They thought it was all planned. And so I pulled it off. And then we went and hung out, with the whole cast, and we talked about our stories and everything. So I was hooked on the energy that you create and the kind of friends you make going through a pretty scary process where you're on stage in front of an audience. That was the thing I loved. I didn't necessarily need personal validation as much as I just wanted to hang out with people that were interesting. And that was always where, actors were just interesting.
Since Fry's, your career is based more around technology.
Yeah.
High technology computers.
Pretty common mix if you think about it, like actor, programmer. These things always go hand in hand, as we know. So, but yeah, that's right. Go on.
Let's actually step back a little bit further. Where did you get started? Where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, I was born in Michigan. Family moved around a lot because my dad was chasing kind of career paths. So Michigan, Alabama, Tennessee, Alabama again, continued in Alabama, then Charlotte, North Carolina. Then from there, I was in high school at the time and I was like, I want to move. I wanted to get out of the small townish kind of experience because I just didn't really have a great impression of that experience at the time. I've changed since then, but so I knew I wanted to move to New York or Los Angeles, and that acting experience with the children's theater had made me feel like I should try this, right? Got to try it. But I started with tech way before that. That was my original passion and still is, where I just would, my parents would buy me a $4,000 computer and I would just take it apart. And they were like, well, that's not why we bought it. I'm like, it's why I got it though. That's why I wanted it. And so I was always into tech and programming, and I was doing that well before acting. But then the acting thing kind of set off this other thing in my head, and I wanted to get out of the kind of Midwestern, Southern experiences I'd had. So I knew I wanted to go to one of the big cities. I just chose the one that was easiest. My family had like friends in, what was the name of that little town? Huntington Beach.
Oh, okay.
Which now I know is not really Los Angeles, but at the time I was like, that's Los Angeles.
Right.
So I went out and stayed with them for 2 weeks to see what it was like. And then I called my mom, I think, 3 or 4 days in, and I said, sell my car, ship my stuff. I'm going to stay.
Really?
Yeah. It was looking back, I was just naive. It is not bravery or courage or anything. I was just naive. I didn't know how difficult that would be.
It smells like bravery though.
There's a fine line between stupidity and bravery, I think. And then I ended up in North Hollywood. Actually, my first apartment was like right across the street from where we ended up at the Meisner Center.
Oh, funny.
With Fry's, but it wasn't, the two had nothing to do with each other. They were separated by years, but yeah, so I moved and started to figure it out. And I wouldn't say it came easy, but I did well. I did a lot of commercials, and that's all about being natural, being yourself, and having comedic timing. So that reinforced a lot of, what I was able to do with Fry's, I think. Okay. But I always did tech at the same time. Like I always had like a full-time technology job.
Yeah.
And then on the side, I did these, Fry's was pretty successful for what it was. And then
was there ever a point that you said, if something really kind of comes through, I'm ready, willing, and able to step away from this technology thing? Or was that always kind of the anchor that was like, it doesn't matter what comes up, I'm always going to be doing this?
No. And I often try to figure this out. I don't really know how this thought process evolved in me, but I never thought I would ever have to choose. And I never planned to choose between either of them. It was always like, well, I like doing programming and I like doing, that kind of software development stuff. And I like doing something like Fry's or commercials or, Monk, which I was on a couple times, right? Anything, whatever I could find. It was like, if it was fun and I liked to do it, then I wanted to do it.
Right.
I never really felt like one was a backup for the other. I mean, I made more money in acting for at least 3 years in a row than I did in tech. And then it kind of swapped, so it went back and forth. It wasn't like one was, more of a goal.
Yeah. But then at one point, once Fry's kind of went away, you seemed to focus yourself more on the technology side of things. And then eventually, I mean, you moved out of Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And what led you away from sort of LA and staying involved in the show business side of things?
Well, I think as anybody I'm sure you've talked to before who's been an actor in show business, it's not the most rewarding or always fun experience. So even if you're doing pretty well, there's still a lot of bullshit that is not really that fun. And that's not really found in any other career path,
Interesting.
Driving around to like 6 auditions across, Los Angeles, changing clothes in the car, and then going for callbacks and like going in and everybody else looks different. I mean, there's all kinds of ego stuff that you have to face. You just feel like shit a lot of the times. So I was never one of those people who was like, I have to be an actor. It's my calling. God bless people who can, feel that way.
Yeah.
I've never felt that way about anything. I just do the things that I like to do. And, hopefully I make some money at the same time. But yeah, I mean, Fry's continued for 2 years longer than I wanted it to because other people wanted it to go on. I drug my feet, and it shows in my opinion, in the last 2 seasons where I was just like, I don't like any of those sketches because I wasn't into it, and so maybe that's part of it. But I was just kind of getting done with the grind of the acting stuff. Yeah. And I never had any desires to be famous or recognized or anything like that. I didn't care about that. I just wanted to have fun. So, like naturally what happened is a technology opportunity came up. I was like, well, this is great. They're paying what? Oh, that's great. And it also was interesting work. So yeah, then I moved to San Diego and took that on, and that company sold, and it gave me some savings, and now, I still do what I want, but I don't really have any desire to go back into anything entertainment wise. It's just, maybe that was something that felt good at the time. And it's kind of, you get it through your system. I mean, I didn't fail at it or anything, but I also didn't, explode. I was just kind of one of those, middle class actors, you make enough to pay rent and buy a house maybe, but you're not like, you didn't just finish Titanic and you're not going on a press tour, I mean, I like one person recognized me one time from Fries on the Side the day after we did the show. And I was like, and I didn't like it. Like my girlfriend she was like, oh, that was so cool. I was like, I don't like that. I don't want somebody pointing me out in public while I'm eating food. Oh, that's horrible.
You actually kind of moved back to where you started, right? I mean, you're living in Michigan now.
Yeah. And that's been a whole big change. I think everything, I mean, I'm pretty self-reflective, so I try to figure the same stuff out. I'm like, why did I do that? Why did I do this? What, I don't know, whatever. But eventually, you live in Los Angeles. Well, I was there for like 21 years. And then in San Diego for 4. And, that's like 3,500 miles or 3,000 miles away from my family for all that time.
Yeah.
So that's like 1 or 2 trips a year for that long. And when COVID hit, I happened to be visiting my family. So I stayed here. And then I was like, well, if I can stay here for 6 months while we're in this kind of lockdown-esque, safety phase, then I can certainly live here. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and I was like, well, what am I getting from being back in Southern California? And, there's certainly friends that I miss and that kind of thing. But, for the most part, it was my own kind of life outside of my family's. And I just started going, my family's getting older and I want to be near them more often and be able to just drive over and say hi. So I was like, all right. Plus, I mean, look, the apartment I had in San Diego cost, I'm not going to get into details, but it was 40%, excuse me, 40% more expensive to have an apartment in San Diego than it was for me to buy a 3-bedroom house on 2.5 acres of land here in the state that I happen to be in, which I won't mention. So, and when you get a dog and you're just like, you want some more space and you want privacy. I love not being able to hear if my neighbors come home at 2 a.m., from the bar.
Yeah.
I need to know about it. I don't need to be woken up by somebody falling against my wall.
As much as you liked it.
As much as I was like entertained by it, I don't need it, Now they can fire guns in their backyard and I can't hear them because that's how far away I am from them. Which they do. So
of course they do. Of course they do.
It's a trade-off.
For a portion of my life in Los Angeles, you represented a really interesting pursuit for me, because although I'd certainly written sketches and things, the discipline of putting on a weekly show and everything that Fry's did, which was, being able to be part of a little bit of the formative part by saying, hey, why don't we do this on teleprompters and introduce that technology and then continue to be, invited to be part of it, because I came in with that and then I started writing for the show and I would get up and be in the sketches. Yep. That represented this really interesting thing that I never anticipated when I moved to LA. I moved to LA to become a writer. And so the idea that, although I'd been doing improv since, 1983, and I had a house group at the Santa Monica Improv when it was there, but it was never like, I'm going to go to LA and be doing comedy per se. My real aim was to write. And so it was really this sort of nice way to kind of bring a lot of talents I had all into one pursuit. And I always found you to be a really inspirational leader for people that were finding their way into sketch comedy and the discipline of writing. And then just that sort of madcap way of, hey, it's show day. People are showing up in the afternoon to get cast in stuff. We're going to do a tech rehearsal. And then the scripts run. And it was just this madness that was just, when you hear people, we've talked about Carvey's show, Fries on the Side, or Fly on the Wall, where they have all these SNL people. And that's what they talked about, was just that crazy, intense thing.
Yeah, they do talk about it. And every time, I mean, I'm not saying, this is not comparing for the quality of the show or anything. I'm just saying, in terms of the system that they're operating under, where they feel like it's crazy that they only have like 4 days to work on stuff. Yeah. It's just nothing. Like what we did is extraordinarily more. Look, the other person we had a couple times was Christopher Titus, who I was always a fan of, and he was great with the show too, because I think one of the things that was exciting for the audience for Fries is that it was so clearly put together in a short amount of time, and we were still able to do some amazing things with that format, that people in the audience were on the edge of their seat because they're like, what is going to happen? And they genuinely felt that. Whereas when you watch SNL now, you don't really get that feeling of like anything could happen. This is right. There's not as much risk
Right.
Yeah, you might have somebody breaking here and there, but it's not like the old days when, you felt a little bit more of like there was a risk to what was happening, and the people that were playing in the sketches had to be more on their toes.
Yes.
And that's an exciting vibe to set when you're experiencing anything, I think, especially when it's comedy. Now, I'm not, believe it or not, I'm not a huge fan of improv just to go watch improv because it terrifies me, right? Especially now, if it's great improv, it's a ride and it's fantastic. Problem is, it's very hard to get to that place with pure improv.
Yeah.
There's just so many things that don't work. And so that's why I liked having the written word to structure that a bit,
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting. It's interesting how that all came together, but you brought, I think, a level of grown-upness and sophistication to the show. So your sketches were very much more story form. And I think, when it came to some other writers, their sketches were a little bit like, bump. And yours were like, let me tell you a story. And so what I remember doing a lot was kind of bringing both of those attitudes together more, where the bump had more of a build and an arc and an out. And then yours, we tried to find the hook a little bit more and go, how do we bump up the joke, to make it kind of sing. And the two, that's what was, I think, interesting about the show, is that we had such a mix of people coming together. It wasn't like everybody was coming out of the Lampoons,
Right.
sketch writing like credits, right?
Yeah. And then, it was always, and then the creative element of having that writer's meeting. Cause I remember stuff would come out of it. Like I distinctly remember the narrator sketch that started out as this sketch that just kind of was like, I'm not sure what this is. And then it just turned out that we had a guy narrate all of the action.
Yep. And he would do this thing, freeze, and all the actors would freeze. And then he would narrate the thoughts of the actors. On the page, it looks like the least funny thing you could imagine.
Yes.
But when we did it in and I don't remember why it got to rehearsal, to be honest, because why would it, right? It just didn't look like anything. So, but we did it, and we had an actor, Christopher Pauly, who just happened to bring a characterization to that role that was very perfect and unique.
Yeah.
And it somehow became, once he froze all the actors would end up staring at each other in that frozen moment, which makes it very hard not to break, because you're just staring at somebody in the eye and you're listening to this ridiculous shit go on in the background. So then we'd have these breaks and stuff, and it just worked somehow. And we kept bringing it back. I'll tell you one of my pet peeves, though. Man, and I don't know, you can see this in SNL too, with hosts mostly, not really the actors. But when somebody realizes that breaking is its own form of getting a laugh, they'll lean into it, and it almost like fake break, or and I'm like, I would just, there's part of me that just wants to make the person never come back to the show. Like, look, if you're going to try to manipulate, nope. You know what I mean?
Yep. It was like watching Harvey Korman on the Carol Burnett show.
Right. Yeah. You can't look, you have to fight against the breaking. That's what makes it funny.
Yes.
And genuinely, if you're going to break and you think it's also funny, you're going to fuck up the breaking. I mean, it's just, it's not that it works.
Yeah.
It's kind of like somebody in a movie. Like Brando once said, he's like, what makes people cry, what makes the audience cry is the fact that the actor is trying not to. And I'm like, 100%. If you have an actor who's leaning into crying and being tearful and emotional because it's an emotional scene, no, you'll look at the audience. They'll be sitting there going, that on paper, that looks sad.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But if you have somebody fighting back tears and you know that you want them to cry, then what Brando was saying is the audience should cry for you. And I'm
interesting.
like, and same with comedy. the audience should laugh for you because you're not allowed to.
Well, maybe something to get out on, because you do have a Brando story
I do.
mentioning Brando.
Do we have time to get into that? I don't know how long your shows are.
My shows are as long as I need them to be,
Oh,
or
okay.
unless the network sits on my neck, then I go, oh wait, we're not with part of a network. Never mind.
That's right. So this is going to raise more questions for your audience than it answers. But it's an extraordinary story. You can look this up online, and I think you can find references to it. You won't find many, but the name of the project was Lying for a Living. If you look up Lying for a Living, Marlon Brando, you should be able to find something about it. I think there's like a Hollywood reporter story on it or whatever. But here's what happened. So I don't remember what year this was. It was a long time ago. It was before Fries. So that's how long. But my acting teacher at the time was good friends with Edward James Olmos. And he calls me on a Sunday. He says, Shane, can you come to this project tomorrow? I can't tell you what it is. I was like, no, I have to work. He goes, where do you work? I said, restaurant at the time. And this is a long time ago. And so he was like, can you quit? I was like, Martin, come on, I can't just quit my job. What is this thing? He's like, I can't tell you, but you should quit your job. I was like, really?
Wow.
I mean, this is and you imagine how weird that is to hear. I mean, you just have to think it's extraordinary, but you don't know what it is and he can't tell you. And you're like, do I quit my job? So I swung it by just taking the day off, calling in sick. And I was like, well, I don't have to quit for that, but we'll see. So I show up at this location in Hollywood. I couldn't even pinpoint the location today if I needed to, but showed up in this location. Security guards at the door. He says, I need to take your Polaroid, I need to get your information, scan your ID. I'm like, what the fuck is this? So finally, I roll with it. I'm like, well, I trust Marty. He's, always been good to me. So let's see. So I went through the process, go inside, walk into a sound stage, and there's a bunch of like folding chairs kind of set up facing a raised stage. The stage is probably, 2.5 feet off the ground. On the raised stage, there's a chair, giant chair. And in the chair is this giant, heavy person with kind of like a moo smock on. All right. And on the person's head is like clearly a wig, makeup, lipstick, and all this stuff. And the person in the chair is speaking with a British accent. And I'm like, what the fuck did I call in sick for? Right. This can't be top secret because I've seen this kind of thing before. And it's indifferent. It's not in the sound stage, but yeah. Okay. So as we walk in, and a couple friends of mine had also been invited to this. It was very exclusive. There was only like 25 people there. Well, all these cameras set up too. And as I hear this person talk more and I look at them more, I'm like, I turn to my friend and I go, that's Marlon Brando. And he's like, no. I go, it 100% is Marlon Brando. So Marlon Brando is sitting in this chair with this giant smock on. He's a heavy person at this point, and he's got makeup on. He's speaking in a terrible British accent. And I'm just like, what's happening? So we basically got the brief after that initial introduction where we were told that Marlon Brando wants to explore acting. And I'm like, what do you mean explore acting? He's like, he wants to understand why people do it, how it works, how to do it well. So this is a kind of a documentary, kind of class-oriented project that he's created called Lying for a Living. I'm like, okay. And then why is he, they're like, don't worry, you'll figure it out. And I was like, yeah, okay. So we go in, we take our seats. He does this kind of introduction, explains that he's experimenting with characters. I'm like, I don't know if that's really what a character is, but I mean, yes, technically, more of a sketch comedy thing, but let's see. So we eventually find out that he's running this sort of, I don't know, project, school, class, open forum. It's almost like Actors Studio meets, the circus. and so what he's doing, basically, to kind of make the story a little shorter, what he's doing is he's inviting these huge famous sort of actors from Hollywood in with these quote unquote average people. And they had a problem with the previous, I guess, group of people that were there. They needed actors who could be trusted to keep a secret and had some level of talent. So that's why there was a limited number of people there. I probably didn't belong there at the time, but either way, fortunate enough to be there. And just wait till you hear how this story culminates. It's unreal. So as we were there, we went there. So long story short, at the end of that day, I called my job the next day and I said, I quit.
Really?
Yeah. Cause they said, you need to come back here every day for, they were planning, I think 12 weeks. I was like, 100%, I'm going to come back every day and hang out with Brando. I mean, yeah, I don't need to work at Applebee's. I'll work, So I quit my job, kept coming back. And the format was Brando would invite people. So the people that I saw there, and apparently before me, there was DiCaprio had showed up and some other people. But when I was there, Whoopi Goldberg came, Sean Penn, Robin Williams, who we should get into that a little bit. John Lovitz. Gosh, I'm probably going to blank on the others. Oh, Thomas Jane. I don't know if I should even talk about that experience because I did not enjoy that guy, but I don't want to be that person who divulges those secrets. So that story is maybe for you and I, but, and then the last one was Michael Jackson.
Huh.
Yeah. Michael Jackson showed up at the end. So anyway, the format, the way it works is Brando set up on this stage with this microphone in his face, and he talked, pontificated about acting and invited these famous people in with these, kind of average people, actors, and some non-actors. And then he basically told people, get up and do anything you want and we'll all talk about it. And I was like, this is both terrifying and liberating at the same time. So when we were there that first day, I don't remember exactly what we did, but eventually Whoopi Goldberg came and he would kind of yield the floor to the person who was there that was famous to like let them kind of run the day. And so she had she was one of the most profound people that commented on people's work and other things. But and
would you be getting up and doing things in these things, or are you just in the audience?
Oh, 100%. No, everybody was allowed to get up and do whatever they wanted. And I was terrified, but I also knew that I couldn't live with myself if I didn't get up and do just whatever. Yeah. So I got up and did a few things. One thing I did, which was, I can't remember who came up with it. One of the female actresses who I don't know, but she had John Lovitz and me play opposite sides in like a court case. I was I think defense attorney and John Lovitz was the prosecutor, and she put together this scenario and then we just improvised the scene. And Brando played the judge.
Okay.
And so we had this cross-examination and I was like, I'm just going to wing it with legal terms. I don't know. It's like objection. I don't know why, but we did the best we could. I mean, we took it seriously. We weren't just fucking around. It was like Brando's sitting there. So we did our best. And, and the best compliment Brando gave me, was that he was like, this young man here, I believe he's an attorney. And then it was a good compliment, right?
Yeah.
After all that, but also I knew what I had done and not done. And so I was like, so I don't know if I can trust Brando's judgment from here on out. Right. That was genuinely my thought. And we were there out of the 12 proposed weeks, we were there for at least 6, maybe 8, every day, 5 days a week.
Wow.
We were there, and we were doing this routine where people could just, like, let's say you came in and you said, I want to do a scene where a father and a daughter are working out some kind of relationship issue. You would pull together a few actors, give them the crux of the scenario, and then you would stand up, tell the crux to the group, and then you would play it out. And then Brando would talk about it afterward and say what he liked and didn't like. And I almost never agreed with his assessments. But it was helpful to me because I realized, oh, okay, we all just are people and we have opinions. Just because he's Brando doesn't mean, he's cornered the correctness of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Because he thought acting was lying, and I never looked at it that way. He was like, oh, you're faking it, you're lying, you're bullshitting people. And I always thought it was like finding some truth in a scenario that you could relate to and trying to play that out. But he thought it was lying. And so different take, but nobody can doubt how well he did with his
lying.
approach. Yeah, right. And then when Robin Williams came, he was there for probably, I want to say 4 or 5 days straight. And it was, the enlightening thing about that was, first of all, incredibly gracious person, just in person. When the cameras are cut, right, we had lunch and that kind of thing. And he was just so friendly to people. He would get on the phone, or if somebody was on the phone and he overheard them saying, Robin Williams is here. He'd go, hey, who is that? Can I talk to him? And he would go on, and he would do his, routine where he was just on.
Yeah.
And people just loved him. And there was this one scene that I did, and I came in and I played this sort of flamboyant character who was kind of over the top. And I played it like high risk. I mean, this is like Fry's high risk, Yeah. Let me go for it and see if I can get a laugh, because it was an absurd scenario. And he gave me a compliment, and I was like, there we go. I'm good. That's a good one. He was like, this guy's funny.
That's great.
Yeah. But he was fantastic. And he had a lot of insightful things to say. God, there's so many stories about this. Obviously, there's 10, 12 weeks of this. I don't know. Yeah. So we're coming up to the close prior to the holidays, and I guess we're losing the space. The production company, who was run by Edward James Olmos, was saying, we're going to lose this space. We need another space. And they actually considered the Meisner Center in North Hollywood.
Oh, funny.
As a replacement. I was like, I don't know if that's going to fit. It's a small theater. I don't know how you would do it there, but okay. But they were trying to break, and they were trying to come up with a new location. And so we come in, it's like one of the last days before the holiday break. We come in, same friend, right, who I told that's Brando, come in, see this in the front of the room, all these chairs. There's a red polo, kind of velvet, almost like a corduroy red polo shirt, a hairnet, and then a baseball cap. And I'm like, that's a weird outfit, even from the back, it's like nobody can really pull that off. And we walk in, and I hear that person and Brando talking, and I turn to my friend and I go, that's Michael Jackson. He's like, no. I was like, it's 100% Michael Jackson. And it's kind of, once your mind gets blown in these circumstances a couple times, you start to get a little bit used to it. So you don't freak out as much. But I was like, okay. And so then Brando announces, all right, we're going to go on break. And when we come back, Michael's going to let us pick up at the Neverland Ranch. And I turned to my friend and I was like, what the fuck is happening right now? What world am I in? Right? This doesn't make any sense.
Oh my God.
Is Bubbles going to be there? I have so many questions,
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Wild.
so we broke for the holidays thinking, and they went through all the logistics. when you come to Neverland, you're going to drive up, you'll park in a, and they'll
Wow.
take you up to the house with these carts. And I'm just sitting there going, I can't, I'm not allowed to talk to anybody about this. Of course, I told my family.
Yeah.
They were like, come on now, you're making it up, right? This is not real. I was like, I agree. I'm not even sure it's real. I may have taken something. I don't know. But that's how they broke for the holidays. And then about a week into the holidays, we got a notice from the production company saying, Brando looked at some of the footage. He fucking hated it. It's never going to see the light of day. You don't have to come back to Michael Jackson's ranch. I was like, fuck.
Wow.
Yeah. And they had like 9 cameras running on every day from all angles for everywhere. They were trying to do kind of like, I think, a mix between reality and documentary. And was this before video capture? So this is all going on tape or something? Well, I don't know if they used cassettes or if they had digital, but it was probably those little cartridges.
Oh yeah.
Get what they're called. I mean, we filmed some of Fries on that. So it wasn't pure digital. No, it was probably like those mini tapes, mini cassettes.
Yeah.
But they probably, I mean, they must have come up with, I don't know, a couple 100,000 of those things. No.
Wow. Wonder where that,
I mean, it's just,
wonder where that footage ended, wonder where that ended up, or if they just destroyed it.
Well, that's the next part, right? So I always wondered that. And a friend of mine, I don't know if I should mention people's names. I'll just not, just in case. But
sure,
a friend of mine knew Edward James Olmos pretty well and was working with him on this project. And I was like, oh, I know Eddie as well, his son, and all this stuff with the Brando thing. And so I was like, can you just ask him, because Eddie was a big part of the second phase of that production. And I said, just ask Eddie if he knows what happened to the footage, you know? And so my friend asked him, and he comes back and he says, Eddie says Brando demanded it all be destroyed and specifically to be burnt in some kind of like fire. So he didn't just want it destroyed. He wanted it like burnt where he could see it, apparently, but he passed away before I guess that could happen. And like one of my ideas at one point was to do a documentary and basically interview Eddie and, you know, all the people who showed up, and talk to them about the experience, kind of get the story out, because nobody knows about this. Like almost nobody knows about this.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was his last project before he passed away.
Oh, wow. No kidding.
It's a fascinating story to me. Even if you never found the footage, I know of enough of the people who were there, who are still working in the business, to where you could go, well, I mean, John Lovitz, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you could ask him, he was there. And then Robin, I mean, he was there. You can't obviously pursue that, but Sean Penn was there. There were several actors who were like TV actors. I could look their name up.
Interesting. That's
Whoopi
fascinating.
Goldberg. I'm sure she'd be down talking about it.
That's
fascinating. She was so cool. I know.
Wow. If only you'd come back to Hollywood, Shane, and just kind of put that project together. I think you'd be back.
And that's what I long for. I just want to be back.
Well, Shane, thanks so much for talking to us. Fascinating just to kind of hear sort of your beginnings and then just your insight into the business from the perspective of someone who said, yeah, I enjoyed doing what I was doing, but it wasn't something I had to pursue, had to stay in, had to become the success or flame out or something. And you just said, no, I moved on to the next thing that was, you know, interesting and that sort of thing.
I mean, it was a pleasure talking to you. I love talking to you always. So I appreciate you having me on.
Sure. And we'll follow up on those conversations another time.
Great. And I'm sure this episode will be in like the best of or something in the future.
Of course it will. Okay. Thank you, Shane.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
I want to thank Shane Elliott for jumping in here at the tail end of our 11th year in the soundcasting game. You can follow Shane on Twitter at Shane Elliott. That's SHANE_ELLIOTT. You can also see a few of the old Fries on the Side videos up on YouTube at youtube.com/Fries on the Side, one word. We're going along with this week's episode, but it's also been a few weeks since we've dredged through the tweet sack, right, Tweety, and read off the handles of the folks kind enough to give our handle, at Succotash Show, a shout out on their socials. Oh yeah, by the way, this music bed you're hearing is courtesy of my friend Rick Schrader. Isn't that cool? Here we go. The D-Head Factor, Dave in the Cave, Dr. London Smith, The Jock Talk Podcast, Stuart Buckland, Milt Abel, That Jordan Brady, Jill Lamb, Podcast Solutions, Michelle O'Murth, I Shake My Head with Lisa and Sam, Salty Language Podcast, Married, Crazy, and Podcasting, Pittsburgh Ned Podcast, and Lee Overtree. And just like that, we're out of here. Check back in next week for episode 351 with Tyson Saner, back in the driver's seat. And remember, our 12th anniversary show is destined to drop at Tuesday, April 25th. Easter's coming up this weekend, so if you're just sitting around stuffing your face and someone asks if you heard anything good lately, won't you please pass the succotash?
You've been listening to Succotash, the Comedy Soundcast Soundcast, with your host, Marc Hershon. Brought to you by Henderson's Pants and...
Imagine your company's name right here.
Rate us and review us at Apple and Google Podcasts. Find us on the web at succotashshow.com, on Spotify, on Stitcher, on iHeartRadio, on YouTube,
on SoundCloud,
and wherever fine soundcasts are streamed and or downloaded. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Succotash Show. Like us on Facebook. Email us at marc@succotashshow.com. Or call into the Succotash Skype line at our toll call number 818-921-7212.
That number again is 818-921-7212.
You can also upload clips from your favorite comedy soundcasts directly to us using our direct upload link at hightail.com/u/Succotash. Succotash is produced and engineered by Joe Paulino through the auspices of Studio P Sausalito, the home of the hit. Our hosts are Marc Hershon and Tyson Saner. Our musical director is
Scott Carvey.
Our booth assistant is
Kenny Durges.
Succotash is executive produced by Marc Hershon. Until next time, I'm your loyal booth announcer, Bill Heywatt, reminding you to please pass the Succotash. Goodbye.